Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
I will never forget the way she looked at me that afternoon, standing in the doorway of my kitchen like she owned the place, a smug little grin plastered across her face, tossing my own credit card onto the cracked tile counter like it was a crumpled up napkin she was finished with. Her voice cut through the heavy silence of the room, all syrupy and fake sweet, when she said, "Thanks for the loan, sis. What are you gonna do? Cry about it?" For a moment, it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving nothing but the weight of betrayal pressing down hard on my chest, like a goddamn anvil I could not breathe under. I stared at the card, blinking once, twice, feeling that rising rush of heat, that burn behind my eyes that comes when you are about to either punch a wall or start sobbing, and honestly, either one would have been a fair reaction right then. She stood there, arms crossed, looking me up and down with that same smug look she wore when we were teenagers, when she used to borrow my clothes without asking, when she would take my favorite sweaters and stain them with cheap lipstick and then act like I was the crazy one for getting mad. Some things, I guess, do not ever change, no matter how many years pass, no matter how many second chances you hand out like Halloween candy to someone who never deserved them in the first place. It had started small, the way these things always do. A missing 20 from my purse that she swore she had no idea about. A package on my doorstep, addressed to her, something stupid like an overpriced perfume or a glittery phone case she would never use for more than a week before tossing aside. I ignored it like a fool, because that is what you do when it is family, right? You tell yourself it is just a misunderstanding, that maybe you forgot spending the money, that maybe you are the one losing your mind. You want to believe in the best parts of the people you love, even when they have spent years showing you their worst sides. The real punch in the gut came about a week before the showdown in the kitchen. I had gotten a weird alert from my bank, one of those fraud detection emails you barely skim because they usually are nothing, just overzealous algorithms catching you buying gas at a different station or ordering takeout from a new pizza place. But this time, the charges were not mine. I had not booked a 3-night stay at some fancy-ass resort 200 miles away. I had not purchased a $1,000 handbag or spent $600 at some boutique shoe store with a name I could not even pronounce. My stomach twisted in that ugly, familiar way, a cold hand squeezing my guts, when I realized that someone had stolen from me, and it did not take Sherlock Holmes to figure out who the hell it was. Still, I wanted to be wrong. I prayed, sitting there in my car in the grocery store parking lot, clutching my phone like it could somehow fix this nightmare if I just stared hard enough. I called her, heart hammering, voice trembling, and asked, trying to keep it light, casual, no accusations yet, "Hey, did you maybe, I don't know, use my card by mistake?" She laughed. Laughed, like I had just told her the world's dumbest joke, and said, "Relax, it's not like you were using it." That was the moment something inside me cracked, like a hairline fracture in a windshield that spiderwebs outward until the whole thing shatters with the lightest touch. When she showed up in my kitchen later that day, tossing my own credit card back at me like trash, it was like she was daring me to do something about it, like she wanted the fight, needed the drama. But I looked at her, at the hollow glint in her eyes, the same glint I had seen 100 times when she was lying to our parents, to our teachers, to the cops that one time after she stole a neighbor's bike. And I realized something chilling and cold settled deep in my bones. She truly believed there would be no consequences. She truly thought I was too spineless, too soft, too desperate for her approval to ever push back. Maybe once, a long time ago, she would have been right. I had spent years biting my tongue, smoothing things over, apologizing for things that were not my fault just to keep the peace, just to keep some twisted semblance of family. But standing there in my kitchen, looking at the sister I barely recognized anymore, I felt something else bubbling up inside me, not rage, not sadness, but a cold, sharp clarity. I realized that loving someone did not mean letting them wreck your life over and over again just because you shared a bloodline. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop letting people like that get away with it. So I picked up the card slowly, weighing it in my hand, feeling the grooves of the numbers against my fingertips. I slid it into my pocket without saying a word. She scoffed and turned to leave, muttering something under her breath about how some people just cannot take a joke, and the door slammed behind her like a gunshot, rattling the dishes in the sink. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not chase after her, demanding apologies she would never give. Instead, I cleaned up the coffee mug she had knocked over, wiped the counter clean, and stood there in the quiet, listening to the tick of the old kitchen clock on the wall. I decided to stay quiet. For now. Because sometimes, the best revenge is not loud or messy. Sometimes it is slow. It is patient. It is surgical. She thought I was too weak to fight back. She was so wrong. It did not take long after that kitchen showdown for my sister to really start flaunting her little shopping spree, like she was rubbing salt into a wound she knew she had left wide open and bleeding, daring me to react, daring me to lose control. Within days, she was posting pictures online, those perfectly curated shots that make you wonder how someone with no job and no prospects can suddenly afford designer handbags, luxury sunglasses, and spa weekends at places you only ever see advertised in those glossy travel magazines you flip through at the dentist's office. There she was, grinning next to a sparkling infinity pool, drink in hand, captioning the photo with something nauseating like, "Work hard, play harder," as if she had ever worked a real day in her life. When the photos first started popping up, I tried to brush them off, telling myself that getting angry would not change anything, that somehow, someway, maybe she would wake up one morning and realize just how far she had crossed the line. But every picture, every smug little selfie, every new pair of ridiculous shoes she flaunted, pushed that burning coal of anger deeper into my gut, until it sat there heavy and hot, impossible to ignore. It was not just about the money, not really, not at the core of it. It was about the audacity, the absolute gall to betray me and then laugh about it like it was a harmless prank between sisters, like I was just supposed to grin and bear it because, after all, family is family, and what is a few $1,000s between blood? And, God help me, when I tried to talk about it, when I tried to get a little support from people who were supposed to care about me, it was like hitting a brick wall. My mother waved it off with that tight, tired smile she always used whenever my sister's name came up, muttering something about how girls will be girls, and she probably just needed a little help. My best friend Lisa gave me this look, like I was being the unreasonable one, and said, "Look, it's not like you're hurting for cash, right? You'll survive." Everyone seemed to have this unspoken rule about keeping the peace at any cost, and apparently, that cost was my dignity, my trust, and my hard-earned money. One night, sitting alone at my kitchen table, surrounded by crumpled receipts and bank statements, I started making a list, something I had not done since I was a kid trying to organize my life when everything else felt like chaos. I listed every single purchase she had made on my card, right down to the stupid $5 coffee drinks and the overpriced airport snacks. I remember looking at the bill. God, I swear it said $3,500 at first. No, wait, maybe it was $30,500? Honestly, math was never my strong suit, and at that point, the number hardly mattered anymore. It could have been $3 or $3 million. The betrayal would have cut just as deep. The more I looked, the angrier I got, but it was not the hot, reckless kind of anger that makes you slam doors and scream into pillows. No, this was different. This was cold. This was surgical. This was the kind of anger that settles into your bones and sharpens your mind to a razor's edge. I realized then that I could not just let it go. Not this time. Not after everything. She had to learn that actions have consequences, real ones, the kind you cannot just smile your way out of or blame on someone else. So I started planning, not the kind of half-baked revenge you daydream about in traffic, but a real plan, careful and deliberate. I called the credit card company and asked what the process was for disputing charges when you know exactly who the thief is, but also happen to be related to them. The woman on the other end of the line was kind, her voice soft and understanding in a way that nearly broke me, and she explained that if I filed a police report and submitted all the evidence, they could open a fraud investigation. It would not be pretty, she warned. It would get messy. There would be paperwork and questions and court dates. I listened to every word, feeling something like resolve settle into place where my heartache used to be. I hung up the phone, my hands steady for the first time in days, and I began gathering every shred of evidence I could find. Screenshots of her social media posts, bank statements, receipts, text messages, anything that showed the trail she had so carelessly left behind, thinking herself untouchable. She had no idea what was coming, no clue that the same arrogance she wore like a shield was going to be the very thing that took her down. She thought she was playing checkers while I was quietly setting up a chessboard she did not even know existed. By the time she realized what I had done, by the time she felt the ground shifting under her feet, it would already be too late to stop it. It is almost funny, if you step back far enough and tilt your head the right way, how some people, when they think they have gotten away with something, cannot help but keep digging themselves deeper, scraping at the dirt with their bare hands, tossing it over their shoulders like they are building their own goddamn grave and smiling the whole time. After that first round of luxury shopping and poolside posing, I figured maybe my sister would at least have the decency to lay low for a while, to stop flaunting what she had stolen, to act like she felt the tiniest shred of shame. I should have known better than to expect that kind of common sense from someone who had spent her whole life confusing arrogance for strength and recklessness for bravery. Instead, she went harder, like a drunk gambler on a hot streak who believes the universe owes her a jackpot just for showing up. There were more pictures, more posts, more smug captions dripping with fake gratitude and even faker humility. One day it was a photo of her draped across the hood of a new car, not brand new, but new enough that it gleamed like a promise under the afternoon sun. Another day, it was a stack of shopping bags lined up neatly against a marble floor, each one carrying a price tag bigger than my monthly grocery budget. She was living high on the hog, and every click of the camera, every click of the share button, was another shovel of dirt over her own head. Meanwhile, I kept my mouth shut and my head down, gathering my evidence with the quiet patience of someone setting a trap in the woods, knowing the prey will wander right into it sooner or later, too dumb or too arrogant to realize the danger. I called the credit card company again, this time speaking to a different agent, a man who sounded tired but efficient, like he had heard it all before and none of it surprised him anymore. I asked the question I had been turning over in my mind for days, chewing on it like a sore tooth I could not leave alone. Can I report fraud if I know who did it? He hesitated just a second, long enough to make my heart thump a little harder, and then he said, in a voice as dry as dust, if you file a police report and cooperate fully with an investigation, yes, you can. The words hung there, heavy and solid, and I knew then that the path I was walking was no longer theoretical. It was real. It was happening. There would be no way to half-ass it, no way to dip my toes in and back out when it got uncomfortable. Once I started, I had to be ready to finish it no matter where it led. And that was the moment the real emotional conflict slammed into me like a truck. She is my sister. My blood. We grew up in the same house, fought over the same bathroom, snuck out the same windows at night when we thought our parents were asleep. There is a bond there, something primal and tangled and painful to even think about cutting. But then again, if someone you love acts like your enemy, what does that make them? At what point does loyalty become self-destruction? At what point does forgiveness turn into permission? These questions swirled around in my head like dirty water circling a drain, and there were moments, honest moments, when I almost picked up the phone to call her, to beg her to stop, to give her one last chance to make it right before everything blew up. But every time that urge rose up, I thought about the way she had sneered at me, the way she had mocked my hurt like it was some kind of pathetic joke, and the urge withered and died in my chest. And because fate has a sick sense of humor, just when I thought maybe she might slow down, maybe she might realize she had pushed too far, she posted the photo that sealed her fate without even knowing it. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, the kind of perfect blue sky day that makes you think anything is possible, and there she was, sprawled out on a rented yacht, because of course it was a yacht, holding up a champagne glass with a manicured hand. Sunglasses perched on her nose, a lazy grin on her face, like she had conquered the goddamn world. The caption was short and sweet, designed to cut deep and twist the knife. Living my best life. No tags, no location, just those 4 smug words floating above a picture worth 1,000 betrayals. She could not have chosen better if she had been trying to taunt me directly, if she had sat down and thought, what would hurt her the most? I stared at that photo for a long time, longer than I probably should have, feeling that old ache in my chest, the one that said family was supposed to mean something, was supposed to be a shelter, not a weapon. And then, very calmly, I took a screenshot. I added it to my growing file, my mountain of receipts and records and proof that she was not just careless, not just desperate, but deliberately cruel. The moment she hit post, she signed her own damn sentence, and the clock started ticking on the little empire she had built out of lies and stolen trust. Filing the formal fraud complaint was not something I did lightly, and it was not something that felt victorious or satisfying in the way you sometimes imagine revenge will feel when you are lying awake at night, fantasizing about all the ways you could make someone finally feel the pain they so carelessly tossed onto you. It was grim work, tedious and exhausting, and it made my stomach knot up with guilt even as I signed the last form with a hand that barely trembled. I sat in the ugly beige cubicle at the police station, under the flickering fluorescent lights, answering the detective's questions as honestly and clinically as I could, refusing to let the sadness creep into my voice, refusing to let the shame show on my face. The investigation started quietly, almost invisibly, like a disease working its way through a body before the symptoms explode to the surface. The officers assured me it would take time, that they needed to cross every T and every I, that they needed to gather evidence in a way that would hold up in court, if it came to that. And I nodded and smiled and agreed, because what else could I do at that point but trust the process I had chosen? There was no undoing it now, no taking it back, no calling the whole thing off, because my heart was getting heavy with regret and memories I could not seem to stop dredging up no matter how hard I tried to focus on the cold facts. Meanwhile, my sister floated through her days with the carefree giddiness of someone who still believed she was untouchable, who still thought the universe bent around her because it always had before. She was already planning another trip, this time to some island I could not even pronounce, chattering away about snorkeling excursions and luxury spa packages, as if she were booking a dentist appointment, not a fantasy funded by theft and betrayal. She laughed louder now, moved with more swagger, throwing around money that was never hers to begin with like confetti at a parade, and every time I saw her, every time I heard her careless, musical laugh, it was like another nail being pounded into the coffin of whatever hope I had left that she might someday wake up and see what she had done. But the truth is, it was not just her that made those days hard to stomach. It was me, too, fighting a war inside my own chest between the side of me that demanded justice and the side that still clung to the ghost of the sister I used to know. The one who would braid my hair on school nights and slip extra cookies into my lunchbox when Mom was not looking. There were nights I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, remembering the two of us building blanket forts in the living room, giggling over secrets we swore we would never tell, and I would wonder if somehow, somewhere, I had failed her. If maybe this was as much my fault as it was hers. But those moments were growing fewer and weaker, drowned out by the relentless tide of new evidence, by the endless stream of photos and receipts and arrogant posts that made it very clear she did not see me as a sister anymore. She saw me as a mark, a resource to be exploited, a fool who would never stand up for herself. And I was done being a fool. The morning everything changed was deceptively ordinary, the kind of day you barely notice unless something inside it breaks apart and leaves you staring at the wreckage. I was sipping my coffee by the window, watching the mail truck crawl its way down the block when I saw the envelope slip into her mailbox. Thick, official-looking, the kind of envelope that screams bad news even from 100 feet away. I watched it happen, heart thudding in my chest like a slow drumbeat, and for one brief second, I wished I could run down the street, snatch it away, and burn it before she ever saw it. But I stayed frozen, fingers tight around my coffee cup, knowing it was too late for second thoughts. I could not see her face when she found it, but I heard the mailbox slam shut with a force that rattled the whole post, and within minutes, she was storming across the yard toward my house like a hurricane wearing high heels and designer sunglasses. I heard the front door rattle on its hinges as she pounded on it with both fists, screaming my name loud enough to make the neighbor's curtains twitch, loud enough to make the dog across the street start barking. I set down my coffee, smoothed my hair, and opened the door slowly, feeling the calm settle over me like armor, thick and unbreakable. She stood there, red-faced and wild-eyed, clutching the envelope in her hand like it was a live grenade she was about to throw straight at my head, and for a moment I almost pitied her, almost mourned for the sister who could have chosen a different path. But I did not flinch. I did not back down. Because while she had been living her best life, mocking me and laughing in my face, I had been preparing my final move, and it was already too late for her to do a damn thing about it. The second I opened that door and saw the wild desperation in her eyes, I knew exactly how this was going to play out, because some people, when they finally realize the walls are closing in, do not apologize or ask for forgiveness. Instead, they double down, trying to bully and guilt-trip their way back into control, like a drowning man grabbing at anything to stay afloat, even if it means pulling everyone else under with him. She shoved the summons in my face, her words a rapid-fire blur of anger and panic, demanding to know what the hell I was thinking, how I could do this to my own flesh and blood. As if her betrayal had been some minor inconvenience, I was overreacting to like a spoiled child. She did not apologize, not even once, not even when I gave her the perfect opening, standing there silently, waiting to see if there was a sliver of remorse buried under all that rage. No, instead she hurled accusations, called me selfish, accused me of trying to ruin her life out of jealousy, as if I had ever envied the hollow, crumbling tower of lies she had built around herself. She tried every trick she could think of, tears that appeared and disappeared at will, promises she had no intention of keeping, threats that were so empty they barely stirred the air between us, and through it all, I stayed calm, feeling like a dam holding back a flood that had long since lost the power to drown me. When she finally stopped screaming long enough to demand what I wanted from her, to demand how we could make this go away, I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Take it up with the judge," before gently closing the door in her face, leaving her on the porch pounding and shrieking like a child denied candy in the checkout line. It was not satisfaction I felt as I leaned against the door and listened to her tantrum echo through the neighborhood. It was something colder and sharper, something like survival. Court day came faster than either of us was ready for, and by the time she slouched into that sterile, echoing room in her best knockoff designer clothes, she had already lost half the battle. Her lawyer, some half-bored public defender she clearly thought was beneath her, looked at the file with the kind of resigned exhaustion that only comes from realizing your client is absolutely and utterly screwed. She tried to play the part of the innocent, the wronged party, the poor misunderstood sister dragged here by a cruel and heartless sibling, but the evidence was a mountain so high she could not even see the top of it, let alone scale it. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman who looked like she had seen every trick in the book and was not impressed by any of them, let her sputter for about 5 minutes before laying down the hammer. Formal judgment was issued in my favor. Not only did she have to repay every single cent she had stolen, but she also had court fees, penalties, and an order that allowed garnishment of her wages if she refused to pay voluntarily. In one clean blow, the little kingdom she had built on my back crumbled into dust around her, and she stood there in front of a room full of strangers who now saw her not as a glamorous jet-setter, but as a common thief. But here is the part she never saw coming, the part that still makes me smile when I think about it on quiet nights. I had arranged, behind closed doors and in private paperwork, a condition that would allow me to drop the fraud charges entirely, to stop the court proceedings, to save her from a criminal record that would follow her for the rest of her life. All she had to do was pay back what she owed and apologize publicly, in writing, acknowledging what she had done and asking for forgiveness, not from me, but from everyone she had lied to and stolen from. It was a deal as fair as anyone could have offered, a bridge back to some shred of redemption if she had been willing to humble herself. But pride is a hell of a drug, stronger and more poisonous than any hatred or greed, and my sister, for all her schemes and charm, could not swallow it. She refused. She would rather lose everything than admit she had been wrong. So I watched, from a distance, as the court seized her luxury bags, as the repo man hauled away her leased car, as her paycheck got sliced up before she even saw it, as the shiny, pretty life she had curated online cracked and crumbled like a broken mirror no amount of filters could fix. I did not gloat. I did not celebrate. I did not send smug texts or post cryptic quotes on social media for her to decode. I simply went on living my life, a little quieter, a little lonelier, but a hell of a lot freer than I had been in years. Some betrayals are too deep for forgiveness, no matter how badly you want to pretend otherwise. Sometimes, losing family is not a tragedy, it is freedom, clean and cold, and necessary. Late one night, a few weeks after the dust had finally settled, I found myself sitting alone at the kitchen table, nursing a lukewarm cup of tea and flipping through an old photo album, one of those fat, sticky-paged ones from before everything got digitized and disposable. I found a picture of us, laughing so hard we could barely stand, arms thrown around each other, hair wild and eyes sparkling with the kind of joy you cannot fake. For a long time, I just stared at it, trying to find the fault lines, trying to figure out when the cracks had started forming, how we had ended up here. In the end, I did not cry. I did not get angry. I simply turned the photo face down on the table, stood up, and walked away, leaving it behind like so much else I had learned to leave behind when the people you love show you who they really are and you finally believe them.